Good morning from California. I am so excited to be here today. This is the first event of the US Raise Up chapter. And if you don't know what Raise Up is, I got you. Raise Up is a platform that offers learning, training, mentoring, development, and talent sourcing tools. It was created to increase the success and engagement in the workplace for women and other underrepresented groups, and to enable companies to attract, develop, and retain potential diverse talent, nurtured by a powerful community. Raise Up now has an online community of over 6,000 professionals. Throughout the meeting today, you're going to see the page, and we encourage you to sign up. I'm Bianca Portubarga, and I was in hospitality for 18 years, but like many of us, I was laid off on April 2020. I decided to make the transition into the technology world, and now I work for a company called Ask Suite, which is an AI tool chatbot for hotels. And I have with me today Liz Carlin, Talent Acquisition Manager for Ideas, Nicole Lear, Senior HR Consultant, Advisor, and Coach, and Suzanne McIntosh, President of McIntosh Human Capital Management. They'll tell you a little bit about themselves once we start the questions. And what are we talking about today? Many worlds were flipped upside down last year. Layoffs happened, projects were stalled, and lives changed in and outside the workplace. We are finally seeing some relief in the outbreak, and the world and workplaces are starting to reopen. We were curious though, what does this reopen really mean? We have heard stories about the struggles to replace staff, people still searching for jobs with no availability, and those who insist jobs are out there and the industry is coming back. We wanted to understand if these stories match the data and what the industry experts are seeing. So we are here today to open the conversation about what sustainability of employees look like in the post-pandemic world. I'll tell you, I have had a sneak peek of this conversation, and I'm really excited for you to hear it too. Please drop off your questions and comments, and we hope to address them directly at the end of the panel. And ladies, just a reminder before you start and answer the questions, please give the audience a brief intro about yourself. And we'd like to start with the state of the industry. More than 670,000 hotel industry operation jobs and nearly 4 million hospitality jobs were lost in 2020 due to the pandemic, according to the American Hotel and Lodging Association. And I'm going to start with Suzanne. Welcome, Suzanne, and welcome, ladies. And Suzanne, I wanted to hear from you. What roles are hiring, and what have you seen not return to the market yet? And I
including
think
you muted me.
Now I muted you.
Got it. Thank you. Wouldn't be the first time. Hi, so I'm Suzanne McIntosh. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much. I have my own hospitality recruiting business. I've had it for almost 10 years now. I started my hospitality career with companies like Four Seasons, and have worked in senior sales and marketing roles. And I also worked for Morgan's Hotel Group. Hi, Iberia. And I have been recruiting for, as I said, about 10 years now, focusing on hospitality, mostly sales and marketing roles. And unfortunately, I have, until literally yesterday, have only been recruiting for operations roles. My business was shut down for about a year, which was very sad for all of us. And so I've been doing operations roles. I've been seeing a lot of finance, a lot of HR. Our HR people got really beat up this year. Then those jobs are really hard to fill. But all operations roles, which is unfortunate. But I have started to see, at least from a recruiting standpoint, I mean, obviously people, like the hospitality operations that are in dire, cash flow issues are not wanting to pay for my recruiting services. But there are so many people looking for jobs, and they get so many resumes that they are now starting to feel the need, fortunately for me, to really use my services to be able to proactively recruit for people. But as I said, the sales roles seem to be starting to come back. I have been working on this one role for the last day, probably talked to about 6 or 7 salespeople, and every single one of them have asked if this could be a remote role, and I hope we can touch on that a little bit later. I know we talked about it when we were preparing for this call, and I think that's an interesting subject. That's it, I think. Thank you, Bianca.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. We'll definitely touch base on the remote portion of the job. I've been hearing that a lot too, so curious to see what you think about that. But moving on and talking actually about technology in the workplace, more and more hotels are adopting solutions that might reduce the need for employees. There are talks about some roles being completely eliminated. We believe that the changes in the marketplace go beyond the effects of the pandemic. And Nicole, this one is for you. I wanted to hear, how can hospitality professionals adapt to the new changes and solutions hotels are using now? And of course, if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, that would be lovely.
There we go. Thank you, Bianca. Yes, my name is Nicole Lear. Good morning, everyone. I have a HR consulting and coaching company here in the South Bay of Los Angeles. I worked in hospitality for 25 years as an HR director before opening my own firm, which was just before the pandemic hit. And, as an industry, we've seen these changes coming for a very long time. Technology's been coming in and we've been adapting. But when you're asking now what employees need to do to adapt as a professional, it really begins with a mindset. It needs to be embraced. They need to look at it as the sustainability of themselves moving forward, embracing technology and finding a way to be a part of it. And so that can be very scary for people because they're going to have to really make a big change potentially to what their role is. But that open-mindedness and embracing it is going to give them opportunities for growth in so many other areas. So it's really about getting involved and see how you can make a difference in another aspect if some of your part of your job is being digitized.
I agree. This is one thing that I've been in the industry for so many years, and I see the roles changing, roles merging, and sometimes it's hard for people to see it, to accept it. And I think it just happened. We didn't even see it coming, and it's already there. I talked to someone the other day that was looking for someone to handle sales and revenue management. I said, "Do you want 2 people?" And she said, "No, I want 1 person." So I really think that some of the roles are merging, and we just need, as you said, to adapt, to have the mindset to do it, and to realize that it's not coming. It's already here, and we have to see it.
It is.
All right, so moving on to something that I get all the time, because as I was saying earlier, I moved from hospitality into technology. I love it. And a lot of my colleagues are thinking about the same thing. So COVID forced the industry to do business differently, prompting a lot of hospitality professionals to seek a transition into technology. So Liz, this is for you. Do you see a potential for technology companies to absorb some of the hospitality workforce looking into changing careers?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to this event. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Just a little bit about my background. I've been in technology recruiting for about 20 years, mostly focused on innovation. I most recently joined Ideas, and I think that's a recognizable name in the hospitality industry. We're the leader in revenue management technology. And I've been at Ideas almost 2 years, and this is my first foray into the hospitality industry, and it's fascinating. So as far as folks transitioning into a technology company or a technology role, I think the first step is really to understand that a career in technology offers a lot of options. I think there's this impression that if you're going to be a technologist, you're going to be sitting in a room by yourself writing lines of code. So the technology options for careers is vast. So I think that the first step is to explore it, to find out if you've got a spark about technology, because that's really what it takes. And just kind of in my experience interviewing people in the hospitality industry, they love the industry. That's one thing that I've noticed. some interviews that I've had, people have, broadened their horizons, just given the environment, said, I'm looking outside of the industry, how my skills translate, but I love hospitality. I don't want to go anywhere else. So if you're thinking about switching industries to a technology company or switching a role into a technical role, it really requires you to do some self-reflection and exploration to see if it's for you and if you love technology. And if it is, that's fantastic. There are lots of ways that you can explore the industry and different roles. You can do some research, of course, online. There's lots of options to do e-learning classes that are low to no cost. So it's a low risk, high reward to discover, taking a Coursera intro course, if it's for you or not, so low cost, high reward to figure out if it's for you. In terms of technology and the hospitality industry, and this is speaking about ideas, we value hospitality industry experience very much because technology's purpose is really to solve business problems. So your experience in hospitality really brings an expertise on typical challenges you face. And this experience is really valuable in building our solutions or working with our clients and supporting them with our technology solutions. So absolutely, I think there's definitely room to transition over to technology, but make sure you've got the spark for it.
Amazing answer. And that's, again, something that people ask me all the time. I think, to me, I was curious and I started reaching out to companies. I would be like, hi, do you think there is a chance for me to work for you? And it was, although I didn't get the jobs, I'm with the job that I am now. It was such an incredible experience because it really exposed me to what the technology world is. I knew it from the other side in hospitality, but it's such an incredible world. And I'm so happy that I did make the transition. But I think people shouldn't be scared. When I talk to folks that are thinking about it, they're like, but what would I do? I'm like, I have no idea, but ask someone, what could I do for you? Send your resume, talk to people like Liz, and really try to get a little bit of understanding if there's potential for you. I think if you're in revenue management, sales, there is definitely maybe more of the appeal for technology companies to look into your resume. And Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think it takes the first step. And the Coursera option, that's great. That's a good one too, because someone asked me the other day, can I take a training? And I'm like, I don't know. So I really hope these folks are listening in and they taking this to heart. Thank you so much, Liz, for your answer.
Yeah.
And talking about people, hesitant about going to hospitality. Millions of hospitality professionals lost their jobs, yet there's a shortage of candidates. And I see this every day on LinkedIn. Long hours and low wages might have to do with it. So this is to all of you. What can companies do to attract employees? Any best practice you've seen? And anybody wants to start?
I mean, I think what it looks like the big issues with attracting employees, obviously, is people who are doing the front desk, housekeeping, and those kinds of roles. And that, I mean, you see a lot of incentives and referral incentives and things like that. Lots of comments. And I don't have a personal experience because I recruit for a different level of candidate, but lots of comments about pay, about if you want people to come back. Obviously, there's the unemployment, and that's very attractive, and people don't want to come back. But as far as more senior people, I think that the finding people to fill the executive level positions is probably is certainly very difficult now, because they're getting just so many applications for one position. I have a friend interviewing or a very senior sales and marketing role, and she had 120 applications, and none of them were appropriate, because people are just blanketing every opportunity they see. And I have a lot of comments about that, and ways that you can really, if you are a good candidate, there are ways that you help yourself stand out and really cut through the clutter. And if that's an appropriate discussion a little later, Bianca, I'm happy to bring that up. But I think that there are certainly some ways where you can really make yourself stand out.
Yeah, and in fact, you did write a couple of blogs on that subject that we are going to make available on the LinkedIn page of the event and next week as well, because they helped me last year. I remember reading it and taking notes and making all the changes to my LinkedIn profile and resume. So we'll definitely make those available. Liz, Nicole, any thoughts on this? If companies are doing something special to try to attract talent?
You know, it's always been a competitive market to find the right talent. And one of the things that I think companies forget about is publicizing how much they promote from within. When you're talking about pay rates and people saying it's a low paid industry, people get into hospitality because they're not going for money. They're going after their passion, right? And so publicizing all the great things that companies do, their promotion rates, their transfer rates, creating a clear career path for people to take a look at when they're coming into a position is something they can visualize their future.
That's a great one. Liz, any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So being in technology recruitment for my entire career, I don't think that I've ever worked in a market that wasn't extremely competitive. And so I've been lucky enough to have, an audience with the benefits team and a lot of the companies that I've worked with, so that I can give them feedback from the front line on what people are really looking for. Because you get a lot of data and a lot of information from candidates if you're asking them what they're looking for and what they value. And I think that's important from a talent acquisition piece, to keep your pulse on the marketplace, to find out what people are really looking for. In my experience, probably over the last 5 to 10 years, and I kind of look at companies, they've got hard skills and they've got soft skills as a company. And the hard skills around what attracts people is, the pay thing is competitive, the benefits are competitive, those sorts of things. But my perception of what's happening in the market is that people are really looking more at the soft skills of a company. And what I mean by that, are companies actively committed to supporting the communities they serve? Do they have that altruistic connection locally and globally? More so in the last 3 years, I think I've seen more focus on, is the company committed to their employees' communities? The employee engagement groups. Are they creating inclusive work environments where everybody feels safe and valued? Have they overhauled their recruitment processes to ensure diversity is represented in their interview rooms? I think candidates are, and I advise this in people that I coach, when you are interviewing, we share the same objectives, the interviewer and the interviewee. Is this the right match? And so I always advise candidates to make sure that they're listening closely and watching the process while they're being recruited, because that's the window into how you'll be treated as an employee.
Totally. Sorry, go ahead, Liz.
No, go ahead.
I think that's such a great point, and I impress on this on my clients all the time, is how you interview, how you drag things out, how you put people through multiple paces, really reflects on your culture. So if you have a fast-paced lifestyle person who's used to like a really creative environment, if you put them through these arduous hour-long 5-process interviews, they're just going to run screaming. And because it does that, they think that's an environment I just don't want to be working in. I also say now, and I know if you're looking for a job, you don't feel like it is, but this is a candidate market right now. If you're a candidate, you are in the driver's seat. Every candidate that I'm working with right now is working on multiple opportunities. So from the hiring side, move fast, because you will lose them you will lose people in a second. Everybody's moving really quickly.
Yeah. I'd add also to your point, Susan, is that we have to also pay special consideration to what everybody's gone through globally in the last 12 to 18 months. And looking or being forced into the job market is something that is very, very difficult. I don't think a job search is anybody's favorite activity. So in terms of employers, I advise them to make sure that they extend, some grace and empathy to their candidates as they're working with them.
What about everybody you have is remote, correct?
Here at
With-
Ideas, no.
Yeah.
I'm working in Minnesota, where our headquarters are. Are you talking about with the conditions around the pandemic? People have been given a lot of flexibility in terms of what works for
Yeah.
them with their personal situation.
Yeah,
But
and
we're a
they've
global
gotten.
organization.
But I'm just wondering if you've experienced the same thing as I touched on a little earlier too. Is everybody has gotten used to a different lifestyle. They've been able to spend more time with their kids and pets, and they know they can do their job remotely, right? So I think that from
Yes.
a client standpoint, when you're hiring somebody, there has to be, again, your word, empathy to how somebody has gotten, and that they've proven themselves in another environment that they can be productive. And there's not that suspicion that people aren't as productive when they're working from home, which is clearly actually the reverse from my perspective. But I
Yeah.
think that, as a hiring person, you have to have empathy as to what somebody's gotten used to. There is a flip side to that, but I can always talk about that later.
We can talk about that now. I was ready to stir the pot, but you did it before me. Because I'm just sitting here and I'm like, let's talk about that.
Well, first of all, I think if I've been working at home, which I have anyway, for the last 13 months, I'd be dying to go and meet people, especially if you're in sales, and go. But I think that as a candidate, one also has to be flexible in whether a client wants you in the office, wants you in the hotel. Particularly, if it's an opening hotel, they're building culture, right? So you need to be there with your people and being part of the vibe that you're creating. And I think that if there's that sort of this is the way I'm going to work from now on, it could stop you from getting opportunities. And I think there needs to be some flexibility. And I'm shocked when I have an HR candidate say they want to be remote. I mean, like, I just don't understand that, but it's happening a lot, and there just seems to be has to be a give and take on both sides.
Do you agree, Nicole? You're seeing the same thing. I see you're smiling.
Yeah, so I agree with everything she said. And as mentioned before, it is a candidate market, and employees have found a way to work, many over the last year, from home very, very well. And they know they can pick and choose, and they can wait a while. As we know, there is an unemployment supplement right now. They can take their time and pick the right opportunity. So I think it's important for employers to think about, are there positions that could be partially hybrid? Can we make some adaptations to get that right candidate in? Because I really think that our hospitality professionals and individuals looking in general are going to take their time, and as they should, to find the right opportunity. As well, cultural fit is huge in that interview process in terms of making sure you're recognizing what they're going through, and making it an attractive place to join is super important at this time.
And one thing that I wanted to bring up, I'm not a mom, but Rita from Raise Up, which actually I really encourage everybody to sign up, because there are so many resources there too, including trainings and courses if you're looking to changing careers. But Rita was here on the background helping us, and she was feeding her daughter. She also just had a baby, and she's still here working from the computer, right? I think a lot of, again, not a mom, but I see my friends, we went through so much through the pandemic, and we still managed to do our jobs, taking care of the kids, and who are not in school for the most part, or at least here in California. And now you are forced to go back to the office, but some schools are not back yet. And are you seeing this? Because I feel so bad for moms that went through everything, and now they're forced to go back to work, not having childcare, not having schools, or realizing that they can do their job from home, while taking care of the kids. So I don't know what you're seeing in that space. And I would really like to see companies making a bigger effort into accommodating working moms. But that's me. I would love to hear from you what your thoughts are.
And I think that we talked about this earlier in just prepping. I know that I think that there's this need to balance out wanting to return to normal. So there's this anxiety of, I've managed through this 12, 18 months, here in the US, we have a different experience than other countries, but I think everybody's just feeling this anxiety of just give me the strongholds I used to have so that I can just move forward with my life normally. And we're talking about, the framework and infrastructure of daycare, predictability with school, public transportation, all of those things. And balancing that with where we are right now, what is open, what isn't open. So I think the term is just flexibility, being nimble, being accommodating, to different situations and different circumstances. We're all experiencing this very, very differently. I think the common thing is that it's that desire to get back. So I see a lot of flexibility in ideas where I work. Certainly, we're a global company, and so one of the things that I'm very proud of is that a lot of our focus in the early stages was on the people aspect of it. So our clients and our employees, and it has continued to be that focus for the organization. Our executives leading that as this thing evolves, and it's not we'd like it to be over, but I don't know. I mean, I still have my shoulders up around my neck, but I think, like I said, that I'm seeing a lot of flexibility across the different industries and companies that I have colleagues working in. I'm happy about that. Again, just pointing out that this is my first foray into the hospitality industry, so my experience might not be representative of that.
Thank you so much, Liz. Ladies, anything to add? Because at least for me, my experience in hospitality, which is an industry that I love, but we're not very flexible when it comes to hours, when it comes to working from home, and to really accommodating some of the people's needs. Do you see it differently, or do you see any change?
I mean, I'll share. I don't see a lot of flexibility right now. I think a lot of people have fast forwarded in their mind that, oh, we're back to normal. Things are open. It's fine. But as you mentioned earlier, there are not as many childcare providers now as there once was. Schools are not all open. We're in summer as well. So you need to find a summer camp if you're going to go back to work. There are limited spots everywhere. So for working moms, it's not that different, right? And in terms of having flexibility about that, I'll speak at least for my clients that I represent and many that I work with and those I network with, they don't have the understanding. They're like, no, I need someone here all the time. This is the way it is. People have to adapt. And we've had the conversations. Well, let's just see how long it takes to fill your positions with that mindset. We might have to have some more conversations if you'd like to fill your roles. And so I really would like people to really think about that. And with all that, these children are still unvaccinated as well. So it's not like we're in a worry-free area there when you are finding a provider for your child. So having compassion around that will go a long way.
100% agree. And Suzanne, do you know of any hotels that do it well that you can think of, that take care of their moms, their working moms, or do things differently? I can't, unfortunately, and that's a shame.
I know I've got several clients who I think have a very compassionate, high value proposition for their employees, and they treat them well. And what I have seen is a real indicator of a culture of how employers have treated their employees during the pandemic. And some people have been incredible, and some people have just not done the right thing. And I think that's very much when you are interviewing for a job, is to somehow get some understanding of how that company did treat those people, because I think it's a huge indicator of their culture. And I think that if they, they did, everybody obviously got pay cuts and everybody got their hours cut, but if the communication was great and they did the right thing and didn't just drag people along with no communication, I think that's really important. I'm not seeing any huge shifts in accommodating families. I think what comes to mind though is there are the majority of our hospitality colleagues don't have the option for working from home because they're making beds and serving people, and those are the real issues. I think that if the bigger companies can offer daycare or can offer some ability for these people who don't have the option to do their jobs from home, I think that's certainly would be a long way. I know there's, obviously liability issues, but I think there's a lot that could be done in that area to help these people, because these people, they can't get back to work for the very reasons that Nicole has just said.
Yeah. So 2 things here, Tiffany. I think that's a great point. Instead of coffee, maybe daycare. I saw the other day, and I shared with my my friends here at Raise Up. There was a company that posted something on LinkedIn, free coffee and free, I don't know, donuts for people coming back to work. And they took a picture, and people look so bored and unhappy. And we were joking, like, maybe they should do something more than free coffee and donuts for people coming back to work, because maybe they don't have someone to take care of their kid right now because it's summer. So I think it's a great conversation topic here, and maybe we can explore that later, because again, in this community, we want to make sure that women are taken care of and they feel enabled to do their jobs properly. And clearly this is a big issue. But from the comments, I think we should also take some notes from Ideas, because I'm going to try to show this here. Chris said that Ideas does a great job of taking care of employees and families. So Liz, shout out to you.
To Ideas, yeah, absolutely, and our executives and all the employees.
So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. And I agree. I think, again, I love the hospitality industry, but I think there are a lot of things that we still have to learn, and taking care of working moms is probably on the top of the list. Yeah. And with that, Tiffany is also saying here, when she thinks about sustainability of employees, how do we get leadership to think differently and make changes that we actually want and need? We are going to get to the questions at the end, but I think the question is here. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about this? And I will try to put the question back up.
I can make kind of an observation about it. So we were going to talk a little bit about the positives from this horrible pandemic. And if it can be viewed as a positive, it's just my observation how quickly and adaptable industries and people and things have been. I mean, who would have guessed that, a large percentage of corporations could have their employees working mostly remotely within a month, and sustain that, and we didn't have more outages just in the infrastructure around the globe. But I think the notion of flexibility in terms of where you work has been a topic that's been, I've been in the industry for 20 years. We've always talked about it. People have always wanted it, and there certainly are benefits to that. But I think that if there's a positive that came out of this pandemic, it's forcing industry to see that it's possible and that people are productive. So it's setting the example of, the benefits of remote and flexibility for work. Their hands were forced. And so I think that that's going to be the start of some business decisions. Certainly there are lots of things to consider, in you making the decision to go 100% remote or offer the flexibility. There's, the equipment, the property leases, they're big business decisions. But I think that this situation has really probably forced a more open mind, in terms of offering that going forward permanently as a way of attracting and retaining talent. Certainly.
I saw a very, very strange phenomenon, and maybe I'm being naive about this comment, but I've heard some people, and I'll use Manhattan as an example, that they have a job, they're working in Manhattan, they then have to go remote. They decide they're going to move to Minneapolis to be at their family's home, and then the company says, "Well, you're no longer working in Manhattan, so we're going to give you a pay cut, so because you're no longer having New York cost of living." That in itself, am I being naive in thinking that's just ridiculous, that they're doing the same job and that's what they were being paid for? Are there any comments about that?
Well, comp grades are comp grades are, determined by a number of different things, the type of position, the seniority of the position, but I think there's also an element of, the region and cost of living, and things like that. So while it's unfortunate, the situation that you just outlined, because it probably came as a big surprise to the employee who relocated to a lower cost of living state, this is where there has to be more thought about it and what that means. If they had known that that would be the case, and how would we have been known back then? They may have made a different decision. So it's about thoughtfulness and transparency as we move forward, and what a remote workforce would look like. And I mean, the phenomenon you're talking about is like California, Southern California. Aren't they all moving to Colorado?
Yes, and Texas.
Or Las Vegas.
Texas, yeah.
So there's going to be this like a big migration, happening across the United States. So it's all going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. We're all leaving. I don't know where we're going, but there's no one here, just homeless people. Unfortunately.
If I can just add to that, if you think about that, there's many, many companies that said that, large companies that said they were going to do things like that, adjust pay for those that relocated. But look what that's going to do to a culture of a company. How do you think it's going to drive turnover rates in a company when you have been loyal to them and you do something like this and you're not advised that there's going to be a consequence? You change your whole life. Boy, that's a real push to go look at the competitor, isn't it? That maybe not do something like that. I think it really needs to be thought through how it will affect the business.
Yes, that is definitely a big one. And Carrie Cooper said, hi, Carrie. I could see location-based salary for new hires, but for current employees, that's not a way to create loyalty. Right, touche. That's exactly what you just said, Nicole. And I agree. I would be very disappointed. I know a lot of people that made the move, especially out of New York. And I think maybe that's a trend, because we see that we can work remote, and why pay high rent and live in a crazy city when you can have more somewhere else. I'd like to move on here with the second to last question, which is what is the opportunity the pandemic has offered hospitality when it comes to hiring practices? What can we learn from it? And I think we kind of touched base a little bit on that, but I wanted to hear even more from you. Do you think there is a big lesson here that we learned? I think the remote job, in my opinion, and the women in the workforce. What else did I hear from you? Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, Bianca, is that directed to me? I just got kicked out of the room for some reason. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow, no, you're back. Sorry about that. No, it was actually for everyone. If you saw a big lesson that the pandemic taught us when it comes to hiring practices, what can we learn from it? And I think we did touch a little bit on that, but any other thoughts about what we learned from 2020?
Well, I think that's something we've all learned. No matter what you're doing and what happened, you can be incredibly adaptable if you have to be. There are ways to get things done, and creativity goes a very long way. If you look at all the changes that we made to onboard people just in general, that used to be something that was an in-person activity. And when you don't have resources available, yes, the HR person that's in New York can go on Zoom and onboard a whole group of employees. I mean, put that type of creativity towards every process that needs to be re-engineered, and you could really get somewhere.
Yeah, funny you say that. The company that I work for, Ask Suite, I never met my colleagues or the CEO of the company. I never met anybody in person, and we did everything online. It worked. Here I am. I'm happy and still working for them. So yeah, 100%. Ladies, anything else that you would like to share?
I think I'm good. I think I actually have I have clients right now who are asking candidates how they spent the time when they were unemployed, if they were unemployed during the pandemic. And I think it's an incredible indication of that person. And they actually used it as an interview question. And I've actually adopted that now. I've just, what did you do? And people who have used it to creatively extend themselves or better themselves or educate themselves, if they said, I spent the last 13 months, sitting on my hands, then I think that's a different kind of person than if they, really did some charity work or whatever. And I think we all learn to better ourselves. And I have many people I've talked to who've just spent a lot of time reflecting and as Nicole said, taking the time to figure out what they want to do next, and not necessarily jumping at job opportunities because they just want to be thoughtful.
It's funny you say that, Suzanne, because the way that I came across Raise Up was through Revenue Hacks, which I don't know if you've ever watched an episode, but it's incredible. And throughout the pandemic, I was watching the episodes and I was really learning a ton. It was not the whole time. I can't say that I was not at my kiddie pool, at my terrace, tanning a couple of days. But for the most part, I really tried to use the time to improve some skills and to learn and to connect with people. And I think that's how I landed the job at the end of the day. But that's the way I came across Raise Up, through Revenue Hacks and the community. And here we are today. So I agree with you. If I was hiring someone, I think I would definitely incorporate that question during the interview too.
And I agree on the question in part, but I am always supportive of that balance between the candidate and the interviewer. I think it's fair game for candidates, and companies should prepare their answer. So how did you support your employees in the last 18 months through this pandemic? Fair question. Absolutely.
Thank you.
100%. Very good one. And I'm seeing finally some questions pop up here and some comments. I thought nobody was here. And we have Cheryl here saying that Carrie is playing devil's advocate. If the employee moved from the Midwest to California, New York City, would you advocate giving them a cost of living raise for doing the same job? I don't have an opinion either way, just interesting to think on. Love it. Let's stir the pot, Cheryl. Any final thoughts on this subject, or should we maybe have a full session about this salary topic? I think that might be a thing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And Jacqueline Kennedy said that I've heard the salary question on the electronic applications are going to be removed as companies place a lot of weight on that aspect, even if the employee meets all of their requirements, but the applicant's salary requirements are too high. That's an interesting one too. And throughout the pandemic, I'm like, do I lowball myself? Do I say what I was making before? Because I don't think I can get the same. I don't know if you can give any tips on that, because this is completely off the script, but I didn't know what to do. When people ask me like, how much money do you want to make? I'm like, the truth, I'll take anything because I need a job. But what do I tell the recruiter? What do I tell the people that are hiring?
I can take part of that question. So, and the question was around in the pre-screen application process. What salary is what they were targeting, or was it about their history? Oh, it's
really,
their requirement.
Yeah.
Okay. So from a recruiter's perspective, there are lots of pieces, in that initial reviewing a candidate in terms of, do they meet enough of the requirements that we're looking for broadly to move them to the first step, which is a first interview. And the salary requirement piece is part of it, but it's not the whole thing. And so our practice is to have candidates give us a range. We don't need the exact, it can be a wide range. But the reason why we want that is that, respectfully, we want to make sure that we're using the candidate's best time, our best time, and addressing these topics in a timely way. Say we kind of leave that on the back burner, the comp piece on the back burner, until we are towards the end, and we're selecting the candidate. They're excited about the position, and we've realized late in the game that we're not in the same ballpark. And it just is not the best use of everybody's time. So while there's flexibility and, the experience that a candidate presents and their expertise, and, there's flexibility in accommodating that if it's the right person, if we're not even in the right ballpark, it's lost time, and hearts go into the evaluation process, both on the candidate side and the company's side. So I just advise, doing your research. There's lots of places you can go to understand your value in the market. It's your responsibility as a candidate to kind of do that homework up front. It doesn't have to be exact. It can be a $10,000, $20,000 range. It's dependent on a lot of factors, but be prepared to answer that question.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. I think it's interesting to hear from your point of view. I always thought about the candidate's point of view, so it's really interesting to hear from your point of view.
As an outside recruiter, I have to ask the question, what are the salary expectations? Because obviously I need to send a candidate in that fits within the budget of the position. And I think that if I think the person might be a little above the salary cap that I've been given, then I'll ask it right up front, just to make sure I don't fall in love with them and then my client can't afford them. I mean, if I think of it, you need to push it a little bit, but I can't work with, as you do, Liz, a $20,000, $30,000 range. I just can't. But I think that it's a matter of playing cat and mouse with the candidate and asking salary expectation. I need to know, because I need to know that my responsibility to my client is that I'm sending you somebody that will be within your salary expectation. So I think that certainly you give somebody time to think about it, but that question needs to be asked, at least if you're speaking with a recruiter.
It makes sense. Jacqueline, I hope we answered your question, and I could be here all day long with these ladies. I learned so much, but we're at 46 minutes now, almost 47. We want to be respectful of their time because they're busy. So to wrap it up, I wanted to hear from the three of you, if you could give us one piece of advice for someone that is in the hiring process right now, from the hiring or applying side, what would it be?
Be prepared for your interviews. Do that self-reflection. Figure out what your career story is. Do an inventory. Lots of people, when they go through that exercise, comb through their career, all the accomplishments that they've made, they forget about all the great stuff that they've done. It's a great experience to do that. Don't hesitate to do it, because being positive and remembering all the great stuff that you've done is a great way to start a job search.
If I can add on to that, be focused with your time and only apply for positions that you are qualified for. Put your effort in strong for what you're really interested. Don't apply to 15 things. Find out what you're good at, what you want to do, invest in the company research, and find out what that culture is.
Agree.
I think if you're in a job search, and Bianca will know this, it's exhausting and it's demoralizing, and you get tired of being told no. And all I can say is, you are your own brand. You are selling yourself. If you're in sales, you're no longer working for your previous brand. Your brand is you. And I think the more you can keep your energy up and your positivity up and keep your profile up, be really present, make connections, and keep the energy going, and really, really be present in a lot of the different platforms so people know who you are. And I think from if you're in a hiring position, do the right thing for your candidates, treat them well, move the process quickly. And if I have anything to say to clients, is get back to them. Just let them know if they're not getting the job. Don't ghost. It's so demoralizing. Do not ghost on people. Just let them know, but be upfront, because it's just really important that you treat people right, particularly right now, if not ever, all the time.
Touche, Suzanne. Don't ghost people personally, professionally. Just do not ghost people ever. Well, I don't know if you feel as lucky as I do right now. I cannot believe that we got these three amazing women together to talk to you and to spend some time with me. I'd like to thank you so much for spending this time today. I'm sorry if we couldn't address all the questions, but we did run out of time, and I just wanted to inform you that I would like to go a little bit deeper. I think we talk a lot about a lot of things today, but we maybe need to go a little bit deeper, and I'm happy to share my experience as I have in the past of my journey, and I'm going to be doing so on June 30th next week at 8 a.m. Pacific time. with Jeremy Nichols, which is also another industry leader. So we have our fireside chat via LinkedIn Live with him. And we really hope that you can join us and share your stories. We'd like to hear more from you. I love that everybody started here communicating at the end of the chat. So please join us, and don't forget to sign up to Raise Up platform. Again, this is how I stayed connected last year and eventually found my new job, because I kept on it. And I would be happy to see you there. And maybe if you want to be part of the US chapter, we would love to welcome you. Thank you so much again, ladies. Have a great rest of your day. Yes. And we're going to leave some resources behind on the LinkedIn page. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.